What happens when Hollywood's golden boy meets daytime television's most ruthless interrogators? You won't believe what unfolds when Brad Pitt sits down with the View panel for what was supposed to be a routine promotional interview. What started as casual banter quickly devolved into a full-scale verbal assault that left audiences stunned and one of cinema's biggest stars walking off set in the middle of a live broadcast. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below because you're not going to believe what unfolds when 5 determined hosts decide to corner their guest with no mercy. The studio lights blazed with their usual intensity as Brad Pitt settled into the familiar hot seat at the View's iconic table. What should have been a straightforward appearance to promote his latest film quickly transformed into one of the most uncomfortable exchanges in daytime television history. From the moment he sat down, something felt different. The energy in the room was charged electric with an undercurrent of hostility that would soon explode into full view. Welcome back to The View, everyone. We're here with Brad Pitt. Whoopi Goldberg announced, her tone carrying an edge that immediately caught attention. Brad, thanks for joining us. Though I have to say we've got some questions that might make you squirm a little today. Brad shifted in his seat, flashing that famous smile that had charmed audiences for decades. Well, Whoopi, I'm here to talk about the new film, so fire away. Oh, we will. Joy Behar interjected with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. But first, let's talk about your recent comments about method acting. Some people are saying you've gotten a little too comfortable playing the victim in your personal life as well as on screen. The comment hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Brad's smile faltered for just a moment before he recovered. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Joy. I think there might be some confusion about no confusion here. Sunny host cut him off sharply. We're talking about the pattern, the divorce, the custody battles, the way you've positioned yourself as the wrong party in every narrative. It's becoming quite the performance, isn't it? Brad's jaw tightened visibly. I think you're mischaracterizing a very private and painful situation. I came here to discuss my work, not to be ambushed about my personal life. Ambushed? Sarah Haynes laughed mockingly. Brad, you're a public figure who's made millions off your image. You don't get to pick and choose when you want to be accountable for that image. The audience sat in stunned silence as the temperature in the room continued to rise. This wasn't the usual celebrity softball interview they were accustomed to seeing on daytime television. The hosts had clearly come prepared for battle, and Brad was finding himself increasingly cornered. Look, Brad said, his voice tightening with barely controlled frustration. I understand that my personal life has been in the public eye, but there are children involved here. There are real people being affected by these narratives that get twisted and sensationalized. Oh, now you're concerned about children. Alyssa Farah Griffin jumped in, her voice dripping with sarcasm. That's interesting timing considering some of the reports we've been hearing about your parenting choices during your marriage. Brad's face flushed red. I'm not going to sit here and let you attack my relationship with my children based on tabloid gossip and speculation. Tabloid gossip. Whoopi leaned forward aggressively. Brad, these aren't tabloids. These are court documents. These are testimonies. These are facts that you seem very comfortable ignoring when they don't fit your preferred narrative. The actor's hands clenched on the armrests of his chair. What exactly are you trying to accomplish here? I agreed to come on this show to promote a film that employed hundreds of people, and instead you're conducting some kind of character assassination. Character assassination. Joy's voice rose with indignation. We're asking legitimate questions about your behavior. If you can't handle that, maybe you shouldn't be doing press tours. This isn't legitimate journalism. Brad shot back, his famous composure finally beginning to crack. This is a hit job dressed up as daytime television. Sunny shook her head dismissively. Brad, you've built your entire career on being the good guy, the heartthrob, the family man. But when the facade starts to crumble, you can't handle people asking real questions about who you really are. Facade. Brad's voice was rising now, his anger becoming palpable. You think 30 years in this industry is a facade. You think the work I've done, the causes I've supported, the foundation I built, you think all of that is fake. We think you're very good at managing your image, Sarah said coldly. Until you're not. Until the mask slips and we see what's really underneath. The live audience was completely silent now, sensing they were witnessing something unprecedented. The hosts had clearly coordinated their attack, taking turns landing blow after blow while Brad found himself defending not just his recent actions, but his entire career and character. You know what I see. Alyssa continued relentlessly. I see a man who spent so long playing characters that he's forgotten how to be authentic. You talk about your children, but what about the choices you made that led to this situation? What about taking responsibility instead of playing the victim? Brad stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with a harsh sound that echoed through the suddenly quiet studio. I'm not playing anything. I'm a human being who's been through hell, and I came here in good faith to talk about my work. I didn't sign up to be your punching bag. Sit down, Brad, Whoopi commanded, her voice carrying the authority of someone used to controlling the conversation. We're not done here. Actually, you are done, Brad said, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. You're done taking shots at me. You're done attacking my family, and you're done pretending this is journalism. The tension in the room was so thick, it was almost suffocating. What had started as aggressive questioning had escalated into something that felt deeply personal and vindictive. The host showed no signs of backing down, and Brad was clearly reaching his breaking point. But this was only the beginning. The real fireworks were yet to come, and what happened next would leave everyone in that studio and millions of viewers at home absolutely speechless. Oh, you're leaving! Joy's voice cut through the studio like a blade. That's what you do, isn't it, Brad? When things get uncomfortable, when people start asking the hard questions, you just walk away, just like you did with your marriage. Brad froze mid-step, his back still turned to the panel. The words hit him like a physical blow, and the entire studio held its breath as he slowly turned around, his face a mask of controlled fury. Excuse me. His voice was dangerously quiet, the kind of calm that preceded a storm. You heard me? Joy continued, emboldened by what she perceived as weakness. This is your pattern, Brad. Things get messy. People demand accountability, and you disappear. You run to your lawyers, you run to your publicists, you run anywhere but toward the truth. Whoopi nodded approvingly. She's got a point, Brad. You can't keep running from difficult conversations, especially when your actions have hurt people. My actions. Brad stepped back toward the table, his entire demeanor shifting. The charming movie star was gone, replaced by someone raw and angry. You want to talk about actions? Let's talk about what you're doing right now. You invited me here under false pretenses, and now you're conducting a public lynching on live television. A lynching. Sonny's voice rose with theatrical outrage. Really, Brad? That's the word you're going to use. Do you have any idea how offensive that is? Don't you dare. Brad's voice cracked with emotion. Don't you dare twist my words to make me the villain here. You know exactly what I meant. Alyssa leaned forward predatorily. Actually, I think it's very revealing that you went straight to that metaphor. It says a lot about how you see yourself as the victim. Always the victim, even when you're the one who caused the pain. The audience was completely silent now, sensing they were witnessing something that had crossed far beyond normal television boundaries. The producers in the control room were frantically trying to decide whether to cut to commercial, but the ratings were through the roof. You don't know anything about my pain, Brad said, his voice breaking slightly. You don't know what it's like to have your children turned against you, to have every private moment dissected and weaponized. You don't know what it's like to lose everything that matters to you. But whose fault is that? Sarah's voice was ice cold. Who made the choices that led to that situation? Who decided that his own needs were more important than his family's well-being? Brad's hands were shaking now, whether from anger or emotion. It was impossible to tell. You think you know the whole story based on what you've read in the press. You think you understand the complexities of a marriage, of a family, based on legal documents leaked to hurt me. I think we understand enough, Whoopi said dismissively. We understand that when your wife needed support, you weren't there. We understand that when your children needed their father to be present, you chose other priorities. We understand that you've spent more energy managing your reputation than taking responsibility for your actions. That's not true, Brad said, but his voice lacked conviction now. The relentless assault was wearing him down, chipping away at his defenses. Isn't it? Joy pressed. Because from where we're sitting, it looks like you've turned your personal failures into a publicity campaign. Poor Brad, the victim of a vindictive ex-wife. Poor Brad, kept from his children by an unreasonable woman. Poor Brad, just trying to move on with his life. "Stop," Brad whispered, but his voice was lost in the chaos. "The truth is," Sonny continued relentlessly, "you're not the victim here. Your children are the victims. Your ex-wife is the victim. They're the ones who had to live with the consequences of your choices, while you got to play the wounded hero in Hollywood." Brad's composure finally shattered completely. "You have no right to talk about my children. You have no right to pretend. You understand what any of us went through. We have every right." Alyssa shot back, "Because you made it public. You made it our business when you decided to use your platform to shape the narrative in your favor." "I never," Brad started, but Whoopi cut him off. "You never what?" "Never used your charm and your connections to make sure your side of the story got told. Never leveraged your relationships with journalists and producers to control the messaging." "Please, Brad, we weren't born yesterday." The attack was coordinated, relentless, and brutal. Each host took their turn landing blows while Brad found himself increasingly cornered, his usual tools of charm and deflection useless against their systematic assault. "You know what's really pathetic?" Sarah said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You came here thinking you could charm your way through this like you always do. Flash that $1,000,000 smile, give us some rehearsed answers about your art, and walk away clean. But you're not walking away clean today. This is harassment," Brad said desperately. "This is beyond anything resembling professional journalism. This is accountability," Joyce snapped. "Something you've managed to avoid for far too long." The studio audience was completely transfixed by the spectacle unfolding before them. This wasn't just a heated interview. It was a complete demolition of one of Hollywood's biggest stars broadcast live to millions of viewers. But the hosts weren't finished. They could sense they had their prey wounded, and they were moving in for the kill. What came next would push Brad past any reasonable limit and trigger an explosion that would make television history. "You know what I find most disgusting about all of this?" Whoopi leaned back in her chair with a cruel smile. "It's watching a grown man play the victim when real victims don't have the luxury of $1,000,000 legal teams and publicists to clean up their messes." Brad's face went white. "How dare you? How dare I?" "What?" Whoopi interrupted. "Tell the truth. Because the truth is, Brad, you've had every advantage in this situation. You've had the power, the money, the connections, and you've used all of it to avoid taking real responsibility for the pain you've caused." Joy nodded enthusiastically. "And now you want to come on our show and get sympathy. You want us to feel sorry for you because your carefully constructed image is finally falling apart." "My image?" Brad's voice was rising to dangerous levels. "You think this is about image? You think losing my family is about public relations? I think everything is about public relations with you," Sonny said coldly. "I think you're so used to managing your brand that you've forgotten how to be a real person. And when real consequences come knocking, you don't know how to handle it." Alyssa seized the moment to deliver what she clearly thought would be the killing blow. "Let's be honest here, Brad. Your children don't want to see you. That's not because of media manipulation or legal maneuvering. That's because they know who you really are when the cameras aren't rolling." The words hit Brad like a physical assault. His face contorted with pain and rage, and for a moment, it looked like he might actually lose complete control. "You don't know my children," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, but filled with venom. "You don't know anything about my relationship with them. We know enough." Sarah jumped in mercilessly. "We know that when they had the choice, when they were old enough to decide for themselves, they chose not to be around you. What does that tell you about the kind of father you've been?" That was the final straw. Brad's face went from white to red to a shade of purple that suggested he was about to have a complete breakdown on live television. "Enough," he screamed, his voice echoing through the studio with such force that several audience members actually jumped in their seats. "I am done with this. I am done with all of you." But the hosts, sensing they had him exactly where they wanted him, pressed even harder. "Are you going to storm off again?" Joy taunted. "Just like you stormed off from your responsibilities as a husband and father. This is what you do, isn't it?" Whoopi added with mock sympathy. "When people hold you accountable, when they refuse to buy into your carefully crafted persona, you have a tantrum and run away." Brad stood up so violently that his chair toppled backward, crashing to the floor with a sound that reverberated through the studio like a gunshot. "You want to know what I really think?" Brad's voice was raw, primal, all pretense of Hollywood polish completely gone. I think you're a bunch of bitter, jealous people who get off on tearing down others because it makes you feel better about your own miserable lives. The audience gasped audibly. This was not the Brad Pitt knew from movies and red carpets. This was a man pushed beyond his breaking point, lashing out with everything he had left. Bitter? Sonny laughed mockingly. We're not the ones who destroyed our own family and then spent years trying to convince the world it wasn't our fault. You don't know what you're talking about. Brad screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. You sit here in your safe little bubble, judging people you've never met. Destroying lives for entertainment. We're destroying lives. Alyssa's voice rose to match his. You destroyed your own life, Brad. You destroyed your marriage. You damaged your children. And now you want to blame everyone else for calling you out on it. Brad was shaking with rage. Now his hands clenched into fists at his sides. You are despicable human beings, all of you. You hide behind this pretense of journalism, but you're nothing but vultures feeding off other people's pain, and you're nothing but a has-been actor who can't handle the fact that his perfect image has been exposed as a lie. Joy shot back with vicious satisfaction. That was it. The final insult that broke whatever thin thread of control Brad had left. You know what? Brad's voice suddenly became eerily calm, which was somehow more terrifying than his screaming. You're right about one thing. I am done running from difficult conversations. So, let's have one right now. He leaned forward, placing his hands on the table, staring each host down one by one. You want to talk about accountability? Let's talk about what you're doing right now. You invited a guest onto your show, and then ambushed him with a coordinated attack designed not to inform your audience, but to humiliate and destroy. You've taken private family matters involving children and turned them into entertainment for your viewers. His voice was building again, but with controlled fury rather than wild emotion. You talk about journalism, but this isn't journalism. This is sadism. This is a public execution dressed up as daytime television, and you're all complicit in it. Whoopi tried to interrupt. Brad, if you can't handle, no. Brad slammed his hand on the table with such force that water glasses jumped. You don't get to speak anymore. You've said enough. You've revealed exactly who you are, and it's uglier than anything you've accused me of being. The studio was dead silent, except for the sound of Brad's heavy breathing. Even the host seemed momentarily stunned by the force of his words. You know what the real tragedy is here? Brad continued, his voice now carrying a weight that seemed to fill the entire studio. It's that you had an opportunity to have a real conversation about accountability, about growth, about what it means to fail and try to do better. Instead, you chose cruelty. You chose to tear someone down for sport. He straightened up, smoothing down his shirt with hands that were still trembling slightly. But I'm not going to give you that satisfaction anymore. I'm not going to stand here and let you use my pain as content for your show. Brad turned toward the exit, then paused and looked back at the panel one final time. I hope someday you look back on this moment and feel the shame you should feel. I hope you remember that. Behind every celebrity you attack, there's a human being with feelings, with children, with people who love them. His voice broke slightly on the last words, the raw emotion cutting through all the anger. And I hope your audience sees this for what it really is. Not brave journalism, but cowardly bullying disguised as entertainment. With that, Brad Pitt walked off the set of The View, leaving behind 5 stunned hosts, a shell-shocked audience, and what would become one of the most talked-about moments in daytime television history. The cameras kept rolling as the host sat in stunned silence, finally realizing they had gone too far. The interview that was supposed to destroy Brad Pitt's carefully managed image had instead revealed something far more damaging. The ugly truth about the people behind the desk and their willingness to sacrifice human decency for ratings and spectacle. Who do you think was right in this argument? Comment below.